Good afternoon. Welcome to Common Talk here on IntellectualRadio.com. I'm your host, Jay Jack. Hope you all had a good week. Weather's changing. Can you believe it is almost October? Where did the summer go? Where did it go? Hopefully with the increase in the weather getting a little cooler, folks will stay in a little more, and those bad guys won't be out as much. We talked about that a few weeks ago, about the guys that are out in the community, harassing the community, causing havoc in the community. Don't want to talk about that necessarily today. Really want to talk about the debate somewhat. We're just going to have a short conversation. How many of you all saw the debate against Donald Trump, the Republican nominee for president of the United States, and Secretary Hillary Clinton, the Democratic nominee? I was looking for some substance during the debate, really was looking for one of the candidates, and I was probably more or less looking for Clinton to say some substantive things. And I was a bit disappointed, not necessarily in her demeanor or even her delivery, but that a lot of the things that were talked about did not deal with the issues. Trump came out a little serious. I didn't see the beginning of the debate, but I heard he came out and he was sticking to his notes and his script. And then I guess Hillary Clinton hit a nerve. I guess she started to talk about his finances, talk about his charitable giving, talk about his taxes, talk about the things that he had done in the past as it relates to the birthing issue for our current president, Barack Obama. And Trump kind of took offense to that, and he started to go off. He wouldn't let the moderator talk a lot, who was Lester Holt, a very prominent journalism, formerly from here at the CBS affiliate in Chicago. And Trump was just a loose cannon, as he's always been. And I think what has to happen as we look at the debate and as we look at the country as a whole going forward, we have to look at what can this man do for us? He had the audacity during the debate to say that the character or the demeanor of Miss Clinton was something that you can't count on. And then at the same time, he was kind of a contradiction, because he started to go off and have rants and raves about things that had nothing to do with the questions that were asked. Several questions that were asked by the moderator, Lester Holt, were substance based and they dealt with issues, but Trump kind of backslid or sidestepped, so to speak, those things. Interesting. He, as I said earlier, he stuck with a scripted kind of text for the most part during the first few minutes of the debate. He kind of stuck with, I guess, his talking points or whatever he was given by his debate prep team, because it was stated that he did not really prepare for the debate. He wanted to kind of fly off the cuff and just say what came to his mind. And he's good at that in certain instances, but as it relates to a one-on-one debate, he could kind of do that when there were like 9, 12 guys in the race. He could defer some things, make a few jokes, tell us a few stories, go on and on and on, and never really give any substance to what his whole campaign is about or what he would do as president. As he stated a few weeks back, or maybe a month or so back, about the violence that plagues Chicago and a lot of inner cities. He said he had a plan that could eliminate that within 1 week. And I say that because during the course of the debate, he mentioned the inner city violence, and he said we need to take back law and order or something to that effect. We need to bring order back to our communities. And he said, look at Chicago. And he kept referring to, under the time that President Obama has been in office, he gave some figure about 4,000 shootings or 4,000 deaths or something to that effect. I'm not sure if I'm quoting it correctly, but he said he had an answer. Now, again, if you truly cared about what happens in this community or what happens in America as a whole, and especially in the inner city with all the violence and the things that are going on, state your case, make your case, state your claim, allow us to hear what you could do, because it's not about you getting in office, it's about what's best for our country. And then you put down Secretary Clinton and say that she's not in tune, she doesn't know what's going on, she doesn't have a clue, she's a politician and not a public servant. And those things are not necessarily true. Granted, we look at both candidates, and a lot of folks would You had a slim pickings on the Republican side, but on the Democratic side, a lot of folks really were wishing that Bernie had gotten through, because Bernie, his messages had substance. He had clear plans. He outlined his agenda. He outlined what he'd do from day one up until the first 100 days, I believe. And he had a lot of substance in what he was trying to do. Clinton, she proposed some things. She's telling us what she wants to do. It was interesting that uh, candidate Trump, as he was making comments earlier in the debate or before the debate, he said that he was not going to give out any information because he didn't want to give away the secrets. And as an American, as a person who wants us to be safe and wants us to have the freedoms that have so long eluded us in this country, and I'm talking specifically dealing with people of color, African American, and Hispanic communities, it's very important that we know what your agenda is. We know you want to build a wall. We know you want to have border patrols. We know you want to send folks back. We know you want to have stop and frisk. We know you want to have folks deported that are not to your liking or to the standard that you think they should be. But you're not giving us anything of substance. I look for something, and I was hoping, maybe that was the optimist in me, hoping that during the course of the debate, the moderator or those in charge would pigeonhole candidate Trump and force him to say exactly what he was going to do, how he was going to do it. I mean, we're not asking you to give away all your trade secrets. Obviously, we, for security purposes and the security of the nation, we're not asking you to be as specific, but you've given very little substance to those things that you're talking about. First Amendment, Second Amendment, things of that nature. You're talking about them, and you're going on a big emotional run, and you're bringing out some of the demeanors or some of the attitudes of people that have a quasi racist point of view. It was stated during the debate. Ms. Clinton stated clearly that you had some racist views. You had some people that you would not allow in your particular institutions or housing developments, I believe, during the early 70s. And he stepped around that. He didn't really answer that question. He didn't bring it to the forefront and say, yeah, this is what happened. This is how it happened. This is why it happened. He made adjustments to every question that was posed to him, and not giving any real substantive answers about what needs to happen or even what he did. Every time he said something, oh, they love me, I was great, I did a great job. And something was interesting. Candidate Clinton brought up the fact that for a number of years he paid no federal taxes. He scapegoated, or he maneuvered through the system. I'm assuming it was an legal maneuver, because otherwise he would probably be incarcerated or have gone down in some federal way. But he said under his breath when she was making those accusations, that was smart on his part, or something to that effect. So he had a little snide remark to say, yeah, I got away with it. I was disobeying the letter of the law. And he kind of thumbed his nose up at the middle class folks, or the lower class folks who are paying their taxes every single year, or that are paying their taxes on a regular basis. And this guy is worth what he states, maybe several $billions, and yet he refuses to supply us with his tax returns. Now he is going for federal office, or for a country office, or for the presidency rather. And yet they mentioned during the debate that every president for the past 40 years or so has supplied their tax returns. They had nothing to hide. And one of the questions was, maybe you're not as wealthy as you profess to be. Maybe you're not a billionaire. Maybe you're not worth 7 billion. Maybe you're not a multi-billionaire. Maybe your income and all of those things are less than you stated. You're overstating your worth. And so it was very interesting to see his take on that. I think he said he made about 600 million last year or something to that effect. That's a heck of a lot of money. And then he had the audacity to say, well, in the circles I go in, that's not a lot of money to a lot of guys that I hang out with or something like that. And so, the conceit, the arrogance, if you may, of this candidate to continue to thumb his nose up at the public. And the sad reality of it is he's been doing that since he announced. He's been very candid and very flippant and very, very disrespectful to the public, but they're allowing him to get away with it. He's been allowed to say what he wants to say. And some people say, oh, he's saying what's on his mind. We appreciate his honesty. Yes, he's saying what's on his mind, but is he being held accountable? Is he being held to the same standards? Had, for instance, our current president, Barack Obama, done the same things, came out with the same rhetoric, came out thumbing his nose up, came out disrespecting, came out in that bogus, that boisterous manner that candidate Trump has done, he would not be in office. And so we look at the double standards as it relates to politics. We look at the double standards as it relates to gender as well as race, of course. We look at those double standards and we can only shake our head, but a change has got to come. And unfortunately, candidate Trump has been put in a position to excel in these type of opportunities that have presented himself and the rhetoric that he's perpetrating here in the United States. I mean, how many presidents can say they really, really respect and honor, or they have a fondness for Putin, who's the president of Russia, and yet you don't have an understanding or a respect for our commander in chief here in the United States. Those type of things are just blatant racism, in my opinion. I think we have an obligation to the people of the United States of America to put a person in there that's going to be transparent, but also is going to be a bridge builder, a person that's going to actually put into place programs that are going to allow the lesser of us to achieve some semblance of order or some semblance of integration rather in the system. We look at a lot of the things that were said last night and we shook our head. He tried to play humorous in some occasions. Miss Clinton, although they say she's 100%, she was a little laid back in some instances. And then toward the middle part of the debate and all the way through the end, she got a little energy because she realized she had him, I think, on the run. He could not come back with any substantive answers to the questions. He was interrupting quite a bit. Every time she would say something, he would interrupt. I think they counted maybe 20, 30 times where she interrupted, and he cut off the moderator several times and not allowing him to complete his sentences or his questioning, or even to ask other questions. Now that goes to say, do we have a multi-panel moderator where we have more than one person asking questions so that they can have a tribunal, if you may, of people giving the questions? You look at different types of debate moderators in the past, and even those that will be coming up in the near future. And from what I hear, also, candidate Trump is saying that he may not, or he's been given advice. I think it was from Mayor Rudy Giuliani, that he shouldn't even show up for the next few debates. Yeah, you think? I think that although they have to support him and they want a Republican in office, I think they are embarrassed. I think they have to be supportive of him as a Republican. I think they cannot, in good conscience or in public view, put him down. And they know that he was not their ideal candidate, because I've never seen it in as long as I've been following politics, where a candidate for the presidency of the United States has little, if no, support or backing from the party or the party officials or the party leadership. So it just begs to look at, if candidate Trump had been a man of color or female, would he be afforded the same opportunities to have those fumbles? Would he be able to double down as much as he's done? Would he be able to flip flop as much as he's done? Would he be able to tell you something today and then tomorrow say that's not what I meant, but you clearly stated and you clearly emphasize exactly what you meant? We have a responsibility, and I hate to keep bringing up that same word, to put a person in office that has integrity, a person that has a goal for the country, not just a personal agenda. Now, they all have personal agendas, so obviously they would not want to be elected into the highest office in the land. They all have those agendas. I think Trump is he's out there. There's some things, man, that he says, and he never ceases to amaze a lot of people when he makes a statement, and then you look at somebody and you say, I can't believe he just said that. Believe it. He is telling you who he is. He's telling you who he is, what he wants to do, how he wants to do it, and when and where, and all of those things. He is telling you. So, candidate Trump, we need to be fearful of. But President Trump, we need to pray about, because to look at some of the agenda items that this gentleman has, and I'm going to be real curious to see when the vice presidents have their debate, Pence and the Democrat eludes me right now. I'm really going to be interested to see what those guys have to say, because I really never heard Pence talk. I haven't heard the Democratic nominee talk or be in a situation where they have to defend what their candidate is doing or saying. So I'm going to be very interested to see what they have to say, how they say it, and where their mindset is. Because, you know, if Lord forbid something happens to the president, the vice president is the next in line. So we need to know who we have sitting there. Judgment, I have a concern about the judgment of candidate Trump. Hillary Clinton mentioned yesterday during the debate that, you know, this gentleman is getting upset over tweets, and you don't want somebody that has that mindset or that kind of reactiveness to be that close to having the codes, the nuclear codes. Wow, that is something to really think about. That this guy at every instance is saying she's unstable, she's not healthy, she doesn't have the stamina. And I love when that stamina question was made and she came right back at him and she rattled off a lot of her accomplishments, going overseas, meeting with 100 and so various leaders of various countries, testifying before the Senate committees or the congressional committees, and having the stamina to keep that going and also do your job at the same time. And it seems in some instances there's a pie in the sky type of thought mindset for Trump. You know, a lot of people, we sit and, you know, we go to the barber shops and we sit down and we talk to the everyday person, wherever you may be, in church or on the bus or just in the park or whatever. And this is the topic of the hour. And it's been the topic for quite a while. A lot of people are thinking, man, this guy probably got in to make some money, to promote himself even more than he did. You know, he got let go from The Apprentice, or they've broken ties. I don't know what the issues were, but I believe, as some of the other folks believe, that maybe he initially wasn't serious about becoming the president. Then that wave started to roll and roll, and then that momentum started to go, and folks started believing, wow, let's get this guy in office because he's not afraid of anything. And so he woke up one morning, wow, I could actually be a contender in this. And then, wow, I could actually be a forerunner in this. And wow, I could actually be the nominee for the Republican Party. And bingo, all of those things occurred. That momentum kept him going. And then he played on the fears of the people that are common folks, that are not as well versed, that are not as exposed, that are not as integrated into a system, or have a relationship with someone that's not like them. And he played on them, and they were happy because a lot of instances they feel that their jobs, their way of life, their way of living, and all of those things have been pushed to the side or overtaken by our immigrants, people of color, definitely African Americans. They feel, hey, we want somebody to come back and take care of us. And so they mentioned in one of the commentaries during the debate or after debate, they were looking at the demographics of who follows Trump. And they found out that the lower educated men or white folks followed him, and more women followed Hillary. So the thing is, I think that what's going to take Hillary to the next level is going to be the minority vote as well as the vote of women who look at her and say, hey, we need a chance and opportunity to show what a woman can do in this office, who's very well qualified. I mean, she's an attorney from Yale. She's been working in government for the last 40 years. She's been a United States senator. She was the first lady of the United States in a very unique or very different type of role than any other first lady in history. She was the one that was more like a partner or more almost like a cabinet member to former President Bill Clinton, where she was giving him advice. She was also a consultant to him. She was also a confidant to him. She was also doing the research for him. She was giving her 2 cents, and she was putting in place some of those things that have come into reality in the past few years. So now you couple that with her being the Secretary of State. So you got a lawyer, you got a former First Lady of both Arkansas and of the United States, and not a traditional First Lady. Then you take that she was a elected U.S. Senator for a number of years, and was part of a lot of things that occurred and bills and things. She was in office during the 9/11 crisis. She was one of the people that voted to go into Iraq. So she has been around, and then she became the Secretary of State after she lost to President Obama. He put her in that position, and she was able to negotiate and interact with various world leaders and various world figures who had powers in their various countries or various regions of the world. And so she knows how that game is played. And so you put all of that together and you couple that with her just intellect. She's probably, has no doubt, better qualified than the Republican candidate to be the commander in chief. But also you look at her stamina, and it wasn't put in question by candidate Trump during the debate, and he has put it into questions, I guess, because she had an issue a week or so ago where she had pneumonia, and there was a lot of footage of her looking a little unstable, or she was walking down to her vehicle and appeared to have tripped or lost her footing, and they had to almost literally pick her up and carry her into the vehicle. And that was just fuel for the fire for candidate Trump. And he said, see, I told you. But he didn't look good last night. He looked a little flustered. He started drinking water earlier than you would assume a candidate in a forum such as that would do. He looked a little flustered. He didn't look orange. His color was better than it had been in a while. The hair was still, well, the hair was what it was. And he is a master of deflection. He's a master of manipulation. He's a master of taking the reins and not letting it go. And he likes to talk over folks. And that's his MO. That's what he does. He keeps you off balance and start off with a question that's asked, and before he even gets to answer anything remotely connected to that question, he starts talking about some other stuff that he's done 50 years ago, or some things that he's put into place a while ago. And he always says, well, I got property here and it's doing very well. He talked about how in one of his properties, I believe in Florida, and I may be mistaken, they were talking about him being a racist. And he said, well, I let black people come there. I let Hispanics, I let Muslims and women and all of that. And it was interesting that I was watching a commentary or someone was speaking and said, yeah, it wasn't about the color. It was about the money. To be in those clubs, you had to bring in $100 grand. And so to bring those type of things up is very interesting. Talked about his bankruptcies. I think It was stated that he had 6 bankruptcies, although not all of them were directly attributed personally to him. There were businesses that he was involved in, but he's lived the American dream of if you mess up, you have a do-over. And so he's done over quite a bit, and now he's a multi-billionaire, so he claims, paying the taxes, things of that nature. He has really, really, really deflected on any issues or given us any substance in his answers or in his rhetoric. So I'm not bashing, I'm just telling you the way I see it, the way a lot of people I know see it, the way we talk about it at the barbershop or at the grocery store or sitting in the park or on the public transportation or just talking to people in general. The folks I see are really, really concerned of we lack programs in the communities. We lack programs in the neighborhoods. We lack programs in our educational systems, in our senior care. We lack a lot of those programs, those things that once were staple in America that were put into place to help those who are less fortunate to overcome some of the obstacles that were presented to them through no fault of their own. Those things have disappeared, and it doesn't look like if Mr. Trump has his way, those things are going to come back. He's kind of guy, pull yourself up by your own bootstraps, and whatever happens, happens. If you don't make it, you just don't make it. That's a lot of the comments folks are telling me or saying to me. He mentioned also about the issue of how he got wealthy. He said his dad gave him $1 million. I wish I had a dad to give me $1 million. But in reality, it looks like his dad gave him more like 6 to 8, maybe even $12 million. So if you had a parent that's very successful and is able to do those things and provide you with that kind of income or that kind of seed money to be able to do the things that you need to do, and you grew up in that environment where you were taught those things about real estate and about development and about things that will help you parlay that money into more money. He's done it. I mean, he's a phenomenal businessman. I can't take anything away from him as it goes to that. But what I was saddened by is that they didn't get a chance to talk about Trump University, which we all know was a sham. It didn't produce what it was supposed to produce. The folks spent their money and didn't get the educational opportunities or the education that they so richly deserved or that they even paid for. And this guy had the audacity to say, well, you know, it wasn't me. I didn't make these statements. I didn't do that. Man, what can you say about candidate Trump? He has put into place a system that's working for him. And unfortunately, the people of America, especially the less fortunate, the people that are in the poverty-stricken areas, the people in the inner cities, even the farmers and people like that, are going to suffer the consequences for if we don't unify this country and do what's in the best interest of our constituents here in America. I want to jump to the issue in Chicago. I know the mayor had a summit or a sort of town hall meeting at Malcolm X College earlier this week in the city of Chicago, and where he introduced some new projects and things that he's going to be working on or working with in order to help curtail the violence and the police and community relationships. One, he's going to be working with the group called BAM. I believe it's Becoming a Man, and I may be pronouncing that or saying that acronym wrong. And he's also increasing the number of police officers that will be assigned to the field, as well as the police detectives, because one thing that was paramount on a lot of folks' minds were that there were so many unsolved murders or unsolved events of crime that no one felt closure, no one got restitution, and no one got a sense of relief or a sense of resolve, because I guess they're overwhelmed. And so having additional detectives out in the field by promotion or by hire, I'm not sure which one is going to be the most effective, but to put them there, is that the answer? Is that going to curtail the violence? Is that going to stimulate a better relationship between the community and the police officers that serve in the community? People in the community, they continue to complain that They want to see officers that look like them in their communities, that have a cultural sensitivity to them in their communities, that have some working knowledge of what happens in those communities, that have some understanding of what it is to be a member of that community, and to also know how it is that they can achieve something coming from those communities, because a lot of the police officers come from those various communities. And I'm speaking primarily about the African American communities, and I'm speaking more so about the African American male police officers who come from those various communities and know what it's like to try to survive and try to maintain themselves in those communities and grow up and avoid those pitfalls and those things that are counterproductive to where they want to be and where they want to go. It is an interesting scenario that it takes so much violence, it takes so much disruption, it takes so much upheaval to put us in a place where we start to look closely at these things. And I'll say it again, it's the social programs. We have to have programs for our youngsters and our families. We cannot go on without programs that are going to support our kids, support our mothers, support our fathers, support our communities as a whole, but and more importantly, support the family, because family engagement is the key. If you engage the families, if you bring the families together and ask, hey, what do you need to sustain yourself as a family? What can we do? What can we put in place? What can we bring into the communities? What can we put in your life that is going to aid you in becoming a better person, a solid citizen, and someone that's able to contribute to society? Those things have to be asked. And I think we are not asking those particular questions. And those questions have to be asked, but more importantly, they have to be answered, and a viable solution has to occur as it relates to those issues. Mothers, single mothers, they have to work. Who's going to take care of their child? Is childcare being available, made available? Is it affordable? What can we do to ensure that those children that are, whatever the old phrase, latchkey children, have some options, reading levels, safe zones, basketball tournaments, gymnastics, track and field, swimming pools, CETA programs, job readiness programs, after school jobs, after school endeavors or extracurricular activity. Those things have to be put back in place, because it doesn't take rocket science, and maybe it's harder than rocket science, but to see the correlation between the decrease in services to families and youngsters, and the increase in violence, and the increase in black on black crime, the increase of random shootings, the increase of police versus civilian interaction in a negative manner. Those things have to be taken in consideration. And until we pinpoint that it's all about families, it's all about engaging families, it's all about encouraging families, it's all about supporting families, it's all about encouraging families, it's all about putting in place things that are going to assist families. You have to hold their hand. A lot of them are not going to understand, but you can't just throw some coins at them or throw a few things and expect them to navigate themselves through systems, whether it's the educational system, whether it's the political system, whether it's the criminal justice system, the medical system, or any other system that requires some level of sophistication in this day and time. Used to be a time where you had people that would come out into communities, the truant officers, the social workers, and all those folks would come to the house, and they developed a relationship with the parents, and they knew exactly what the needs of the youngsters were, whether it was getting breakfast and lunch or free meals, whether it was getting tutorials or extra attention, whether it was getting special education assistance, whether it was getting diagnosis of some kind, whether they needed to see the psychiatrist or psychologist, whether there were medical issues. Those things were afforded to families as it relates to our government just being able to sustain a family. With the downsizing of jobs, the elimination of jobs, the non-existence of commerce in our communities. Years ago, our communities were vibrant. We owned things in our community. We owned the stores, we owned the barbershops, we owned the beauty salons, we owned the liquor stores, we owned the laundromats. Everything in our community, we had a piece of it. We may not have owned everything, but we did have businesses. Now you go in a community, you see very little business in the African American community that is owned and operated by an African American. That's a sad state of affairs. And so we have to look at some things like the folks that are in the Woodlawn area, I mean the Inglewood area, that are putting back some resources. As a matter of fact, they're opening up a Whole Foods in that community, as well as some other things that are coming into that community. Economic development and reinvestment in the communities. And when you put those places in the community, you don't want them to put those places there and then take the resources and take the revenue out. You want them to reinvest in the community so that you can provide for the families, for the mothers, for the fathers, for the youngsters. Put some kind of programmatic systems in place so that those things that we want to see happen will happen. And our children will be educated, they'll be informed, they'll be exposed, they'll be motivated, and they'll be in a position to help each other and help others. Because if we don't, we're going to be in a society where we're going to be taking care of our children until we leave. They're not going to be the ones that assist us. They're not going to be the ones that can sustain their livelihood and take care of their families. So it's very, very important that we get out and vote. We vote wisely. We vote informed. We know what our politicians are talking about, and we hold them accountable. I don't know what's going to occur in the next couple of weeks after we cast our votes for the president of the United States, but I know in our local arena, we got to hold our public officials accountable. We got to go and meet with them. We got to email them. We got to write them letters. We got to phone them. We got to tell them, hey, we're not happy or we're not content with the state of affairs in our communities. We need you to be that person you were when you wanted my vote. And if they're not the person that they were claiming to be when they sought us our votes, then we need to look at other options. And what I mean by other options is maybe another candidate, maybe another person in office, maybe a different way of viewing things, maybe some restructuring in an attempt to make our lives a little better, because we're living in a war zone. A lot of folks are mentioning martial law. Martial law is not necessarily the answer, but we're living in a war zone. We cannot continue to allow our communities to be up in arms as they are. You look at Beirut and some of the Middle Eastern countries and some of the countries that are going through turmoil and just war-driven, war-torn nations. Every day someone is walking home. They don't know if they're going to make it or not. Our youngsters are going through the exact same thing in the city of Chicago and across this nation, for that matter. So we have a very, very, very great opportunity to cease this. And how do we do that? We begin with taking care of families, and we begin with taking care of each other, and we begin with allowing those resources to funnel through the system and come back into the community that are going to help aid us as we move forward to make ourselves viable in this community. Well, we're going to call it quits for today, guys. I told you it'd be a short one. We just thank you for tuning in. You've been in tune here on IntellectualRadio.com. I'm your host, J Jack. We'll see you on the next round. Have a good week. We are out.